Hello, everyone. We will continue with our discussion on Kingdom Protista. So, yung last lesson natin was on the general features of Protists. Ano? Sinabi natin that they have this unique support and protection. Some of them have special means of motility and then means of nutrition and then yung iba't ibang types of pseudopodia and also their unique reproduction and life cycle. So for today, we are going to go deeper in our discussion as we look into their diversity. Ano? So in the module, merong 4 supergroups, but again, in some textbooks, yung SAR clade is further divided into 2 supergroups, no? Yung chrome alveolata tsaka yung archaeplastida, yung alveolatis and yung rhizaria. But in our module, susundin natin na meron lang 4. Okay? Excavata, Sarclade, Archaeplastida, and Uniconta. Okay? So, ito yung pag-aaralan natin today. For excavata, yung hallmark ng excavata would include yung protists na meron silang modified na mitochondria, no? And some of them would even have unique na flagella. Okay? So basahin ko lang ano, they are defined by an asymmetrical appearance with a feeding groove that is excavated on one side. So para siyang indented on one side, ano? At ito yung kanyang feeding organ, yung kanyang feeding point of feeding. Okay, they can be parasitic, some are photosynthetic, and others are heterotrophic predators. And within excavata, merong 3 subgroups. Okay, we have diplomonads, parabasalids, and euglenozoans. Okay, so both diplomonads and parabasalids, meron sila nung modified na mitochondria. So instead of mitochondria, meron silang something in lieu. Okay? Whereas yung euglenozoans naman, like for example, yung trypanosoma, ang kanila naman is that they have this inside na flagella, no? Endoflagella, no? That is usually spiral or crystalline in structure. Okay? So diplomonads mostly are parasitic, no? Para siyang heart dito, no? In the picture right here, this is actually Giardia intestinalis. This is a parasitic na diplomonad and it lacks a functional mitochondria. So instead, they have what we call a remnant of the mitochondria called mitostomes. Mitostomes rather have been identified, but the function apart from supplying energy for the proteins is not fully elucidated. And diplomonads thrive in anaerobic environments, you know. And as you can see here, each diplomonad cell would have 2 identical nuclei, you know, and this one right here would be they would have several flagella situated at different parts of the organism, and it's used for locomotion. Okay. So other features for this would include the presence of multiple na posterior na flagella, no, apart from the absence of a functional mitochondria. So in here, this parasite right here, Giardia intestinalis, can bakit nandito si Rouge? Hey, Rouge. This one right here can pass from human to human via contaminated water and causes diarrhea. Okay? So the next one would be parabasalids. They also have this semi-functional mitochondria. So instead of mitosomes, the one that's found in diplomonads, meron silang degenerated na mitochondria that's functioning as a redox organelle. So these structure would function anaerobically and are called hydrogenosomes. So kung merong mitosomes sa diplomonad, meron namang hydrogenosomes sa parabasalids, no? Because they produce hydrogen gas as a byproduct. And these parasitic protists move with flagella and then this membrane rippling, no, yung nasa gilid nila. So these are their two modes of locomotion in addition or in tawag dyan, in consonance with their flagella. Okay, so in the picture, this is actually this shows the undulating membrane, which is a hallmark of Parabasalis. So there are many species, okay, under this classification, and sinabi natin kanina yung distinguishing feature nila would be this undulating membrane, no, that's chiefly used for locomotion. Okay, and then lastly for excavata we have euglenozoans. So euglena, say for example yung picture nung euglena being eaten by yung paramecium, no? That's an example. So these would include parasites, heterotrophs, autotrophs, and mixotrophs. So they're very diverse, and they move using a pair of these long flagella that will guide them towards light sources, which are primarily sensed during sensed light sources that's sensitive to ocular organ called eye spot, no? So some exotrophic species would display this photosynthetic capability only when light is present. So ano yung kanilang adaptations if light is absent? Okay? So in the dark, the chloroplast of these organisms would shrink and would take up organic nutrients from the environment instead. So dual purpose yung kanilang chloroplast, no, depending on the availability of light. Okay? So euglenozoans can change shape when swimming, no? And that is their most distinguishing feature, when they can change their body shape, which would alternate between being stretched out and being rounded up. Okay? And they can change shape that easily because they lack a rigid na cell wall. So instead, what they have in their cell membrane would be strips of protein that encircle the cell. And these strips of protein can slide over each other, which confers flexibility to euglenozoans. Okay? And then yung next na supergroup will be that of Harosa. Harosa in other textbooks, it's a clade that includes straminopiles, or also called heteroconts, alveolates, and rhizaria. And these organisms have hairy and smooth na flagella, and they can be membrane in closed sacs, no, like known as alveoli beneath the plasma membrane, or they can be amoebas with thread-like pseudopodia. So for straminopiles, these includes this include diatoms, golden algae, brown algae. Alveolates would include yung dinoflagellates, apicomplexans, ciliates, and then we have rhizarians, which includes regularians, yung ating forams, iba yung foraminiferans natin, and cercozoans. Okay? So isa-isahin natin yan. First off, we have straminopiles. Straminopiles, yung kanyang hallmark naman would be the presence of this long anteriorly directed flagellum, no? And para siyang toothbrush na mga bristles, no, called mastigonemes, or also called as straminopilae, hence the name straminopiles. So it's a monophyletic cluster of autotrophic organisms, no? And there are some heterotrophs, and they have a wide variety of life history, no? They are unicellular, they are parasitic, and they are endocommensals. Okay, so para siyang toothbrush bristle, And these hair-like flagella are used to capture yung tiny particles for food, no? Sorry. For alveolates naman, Another branch for this includes some of the common na protists na alam natin, no, like the dinoflagellates, the ciliates, the apicomplexans, all of which meron silang common na lineage pero very diverse yung kanilang mode of locomotion. Yung common na trait that's shared among dinoflagellates, apicomplexans, and ciliates would be the presence of yung flattened na vesicles, no, called alveoli. Hence, the name alveolatis, no? Alveolata, okay? It's stacked in a continuous layer that's situated right below their plasma membrane. So ito yung alveolar sac na to. This can be found in all dinoflagellates, apicomplexans, and ciliates. They are mostly unicellular, no? And they can be diverse in terms of their nutrition. Some can be parasitic, heterotrophic, autotrophic, and mixotrophic. Ano? Yung alveoli na to, it functions in membrane transport similar to the way that we look into Golgi apparatus. Okay? So that's one, no? Yung second branch would include yung apicomplexans, no, yung ating brown algae, the diatoms, or yung ating water molds. It's also part of sarclade. Okay? For dinoflagellata, what's unique about them is that they have these distinct shapes due to the frames of cellulose within their cell wall. So their cell wall is similar to that of plant cells, no, cell wall. And this cell wall, alam natin, it's a rigid structure, so that's why very distinct yung kanyang shapes, ano. And these cell surface are ridged with perpendicular na grooves that houses a pair of flagella. So ayan, pair na to. And some can be coiling, ano, okay, around the organism, as in the case of Serratium and Ganyaulox. These are common diatoms that's found in the marine environment also, ano. So defining characteristic of this group would be their grooves, ano, which cause the dinoflagellates to rotate as they move forward. Okay? And dinoflagellates, although many of them are beneficial, but they are responsible for red tide events or yung tinatawag natin na harmful algal blooms. So, in the pictures are some of the dinoflagellates known to date. We have Noctiluca. Noctiluca, it lacks yung heavy na cellulose armor, but it's one of the bioluminescent organisms that causes waves to sparkle in warm seas, no, yung nakikita niyo na kapag na-disturb yung upper membrane ng how do you say, ng water, then it will be tawag dyan, it will shine, no, or it will produce light. That's because of Noctiluca. Okay? And then we also have dinoflagellates that are photosynthesizers, ano, and they have this distinct feature. So because they are photosynthesizers, they're found at the base of the food chain, some of them. Okay? So here is an example of overgrowth of dinoflagellates, ano. Yung harmful algal blooms occur because yung mga phytoplankton, okay, they grow quickly in large amounts, and in large amount they produce toxic or harmful effect to people, di ba, residing in the area, yung fish, shellfish, marine mammals, and even marine birds, no? But in reality, not all algal blooms are harmful. Some in reality are actually beneficial. Okay? So, yung it is harmful apart from the fact that it can produce toxin, like for example yung paralytic shellfish poisoning, no, amnesiac shellfish poisoning. All of these are caused by the dinoflagellates, you know. While we know many of factors that contribute to hubs, yung other contributing factor is because of competition for oxygen. So take note, they require oxygen for their growth. So when there's too much of them, it will outcompete, no? They will outcompete with the existing marine organisms that's supposed to be supported by this amount of oxygen. So in a way, nagiging harmful siya because of competition. Okay? So hubs would occur not naturally, but there are many anthropogenic factors or human activities that disturb ecosystem which seem to play a role, no, that make their occurrence more frequent and more intense. Halimbawa, nagkaroon ng farming in upland. So these farming sites halimbawa would use fertilizers, and then kapag umulan during episodes of heavy rain, what happens is nadadala ito siya in bodies of water, no? For example, in the case of Lake Cebu. And that is why um when we study Lake Cebu, we do not need to look into just the lake itself, but also the adjacent farmlands, because the farmlands would would use these fertilizers and chemicals to improve their crop, and too much of this one will be tawag dyan, deposited in lakes, no? Nagiging catch basin yung ating lake. So when there's too much of nutrients, of course, the tendency the of these phytoplankton would grow quickly kasi nasatisfy yung kanilang requirements for growth. So as a result, magiging marami sila, and they will stay there for a long time, no, if left untreated. Okay? So still under star clade, we have apicomplexa, no? These are parasites that are specialized for living within animal tissues. Okay? So yung apical complex natin, sinabi natin kanina, it's a cluster of microtubules and organelles that's located in the apex of cells, no, and are in the sporozoite or in its infection stage. So part ng function din ng apical complex is it facilitates in the penetration of the host cells, no? So these organisms are called apicomplexans because unique yung arrangement ng kanilang cell or organelles, no? We have the fibrils, we have their microtubules, we have their vacuoles, which are very much unique with the others. Okay, so um, most of them require more than one host to complete their life cycle, no? So for example, this one is the plasmodium, no, the one that causes malaria. Okay, so malaria, it's a alam natin na yung carrier niya, yung vector niya is mosquito, but when it's in a mosquito, hindi siya nagko-cause ng sakit sa mosquito. But the moment that you get uh, by an infected na mosquito, then that's the time na mag-progress yung sporozoite ng plasmodium na uh, to infect humans, ano? So that's one here. And then we also have the ciliates, no, or the ciliophora. It's characterized by this presence of hair-like organelles. Okay, so in the picture we have paramecium, no, and the main features of these ciliate would include apart from cilia na nakikita natin, meron siyang dalawang nuclei, no. We have the micro and the macronucleus, and it has also specialized organelles. Okay, so ciliates usually arrange in longitudinal rows, no, around the cell, and it's anchored to microtubules, no, just beneath the plasma membrane. Okay, and then lastly, for sarclade, we have rhizarians, no. Many of them are heterotrophic and free living and are difficult to isolate and culture. Okay, so we have in the picture yung first part, yung actinosferum, no. You can see this needle-like na pseudopodia, no. So in this way, we can para siyang reticulopodia, no, thin, slender-like na na protoplasmic extensions. And we have here is a representative of foraminifera, no. This is podia. Thin naman yung kanyang cytoplasmic na projections, and you can see here the calcareous na test. Test is another term for the shell, no, of this living foraminifera. So you can see, no, gaya ng sinabi ko early on, under the microscope, parang dull or parang matte yung kanyang finish because its test or its shell is made up of calcium carbonate. Whereas if it's a radiolarian, shiny kayo na siya under the microscope. Okay? So radiolarians are common na marine phytoplankton, ano? And uh, and in the marine ecosystem, they serve as the early food of the developing na young. Okay? And then we also have Archaeplastida. So Archaeplastida, from the word plastids, no, Archaeplastida, these are basically para siyang archaebacteria that contains plastids, no. All organisms would share plastids or chloroplast and have believed to be a product of endosymbiosis, di ba? So naalala nyo yung primary and then secondary endosymbiosis. Ito daw yung group organisms under this group yung products, ano? And merong major subgroups under archaeplastids. We have the glaucophytes, the rhodophytes, and then the chloroplastids. So, sorry. Ang first would be glaucophytes, no? They are known to be cryptic, and these organisms show or are known to inhabit the surface of many freshwater environments. So they were able to retain a number of these ancestral traits of the cyanobacteria-like organisms referred to as cyanils or muroplast. No, as you can see here, very similar siya with that of cyanobacteria. Pero yung pinagkaiba lang niya would be something to do with their cell wall. Okay? And we also have rhodophytes, or also known as red algae. Some are unicellular but mostly are filamentous and multicellular. So yung red pigmentation dito is because of a photosynthetic pigment called the phycoerythrin. So this one, the intensity of the coloration would depend on the depth where the species thrive. So darker siya na coloration, it's usually observed in deeper waters, no? And red algae are important source of carrageenan and agar, no? Carrageenan, if you are a fan of corned beef, say for example, yung parang sebo dyan, yung parang puti, these are not only sebo, no? It can be, no, from the beef itself, but these are stabilizers, ano, para hindi tumigas yung corned beef. So, isa sa mga pinagkukunan, importanteng pinagkukunan ng carrageenan would be these rhodophytes. Okay? And we also have these cute chloroplastids. Gusto ko itong Volvox actually. Kaya ito yung naalala ko talaga sa college no, na I was able to see it under the microscope. Para siyang cell that contains many colonies. Para siyang balloon na maraming balloons na maliliit sa loob. Okay? And then you also have ulva, no? Yung para siyang seaweed. Okay? And chloroplastids pulls together your green algae along with other land plants, no? So although they are strikingly different, but they are situated under chloroplastids. And they have these photosynthetic pigments that are similar to what we can see in land plants, no? Like xanthophyll, carotene, chlorophyll A and B. Okay? They can be motile as in the case of volvox or sedentary as in the case of ulva, which is attached to the substrate, and they are ubiquitously present in freshwater ecosystems. Some of them are microscopic as in the case of volvox, some can be macro, no, as in the case of ulva. Okay? So very ano siya, very diverse siya. Okay? So um sinasabi na they are the predecessors ano of land plants, the modern day land plants. So yung chlorophytes no are of special interest because of their unusual diversity and lines of specialization. They would have these extensive fossil record that would date as early as 900 million years. So ganun siya ka-early na record ano. Okay? Kajot, ay, ano sila. Remove ko lang ha. Okay. And then, second to the last would be Uniconta. Okay? Ito yung pinaka-heterogeneous naman of all the protists. We have Amoebozoa and Opisthoconta. And then, ito yung para silang fungi-like naman. Okay? So, capable sila of cyst formation just like that of algae, no? And when resources are inadequate, they can be dormant, and then they can, when conditions permit, no, they consume their prey via phagocytosis. And they are an important food web linkage in aquatic ecosystem, no? In the picture right here, the first picture, yung parang yellow na mga pretzel dyan, this is a plasmodial protist, no? It's a multinucleated na pretzel na slime mold, and it basically moves in search for bacteria and organic particles that it ingests. So lahat ng dinadaanan niya and even the substrate that it latches onto can be a possible source of its nutrients. Okay? The second picture, cute po kasi siya, para siyang blueberry, no? It's the sporangia of a plasmodial slime mold, and this is under the phylum Myxomycota, and this sporangia right here can later, or yung fruiting bodies can later on be grow into another individual, no? So in terms of difference between fungi, you might wonder, no, ngano dili siya fungi, nga murag fungi man iyang ano, iyang characteristic, di ba? It produces these spores, and then it tawag dyan, it derives its nutrient by absorbing and ingesting yung nutrients from its substrate, but it differs from fungi because their cell walls have cellulose instead of chitin. Yung fungi, yung kanilang cell wall is made up of chitin, whereas for amoebozoans naman, their cell wall are made up of cellulose, something that's similar to plants. So naa siya plant-like, naa siya fungi-like na so hindi siya ma-resolve ng scientists, nilagay siya under protist, So fungus-like protists do not have divisions also between their cells, something na meron kay fungi. Okay? So this goes to show na slime molds in this case have both animal and plant-like characteristics. Okay? And then we also have still under Uniconta, we have the Opisthoconta, and merong dalawang distinct lang na members dito, We have the nuclearids, which are Phylos amoeba, Phylos amoeba identified as the ancestral group of fungi. And we also have choanoflagellates, the only protist that's the closest known relative of animals based on phylogenetic studies. Okay? And then, so tapos na tayo for the different na supergroups of protists. So we will just touch some of the known importance of protists. So in terms of ecological sense, many protists are primary producers and even symbionts. Okay? So we have Aphanizomenon, Flos aquae, and Spirulina, no? So very common yung spirulina, no? Some are in the form of a food supplement, no? And mainly because they are beneficial kasi nga they have a lot of essential amino acids that can fortify our systems, no? Na hindi na mahirap i-outsource with just that of normal na food stuff. Okay? And it is blue-green algae and not plants that provide the majority of Earth's oxygen. No? So algae, like seaweed, it also serves as a marine ecosystem for other marine life, especially yung developing young. When fish, say for example, are young, they tend to inhabit the shallow regions of the sea kasi nga andoon yung amount of andun yung large amounts of food, and it also gives them protection that they need against predators. Sorry for that. Sakit pa din kasi ako eh. So apart from being producers and symbionts, some naman can be pathogens, no? And some parasitic protists can cause problems in our agriculture. Okay? So yung downy mildew disease, say for example, no, yung parang cotton like na na tawag dyan na formations in the leaves. This is an example of a, a protist na plant pathogen, ano? And also yung wet weather disease, no? It will cause stunted growth, even discoloration of the withered leaf. And it may seem very superficial, but if left unresolved, it can rapidly infect and devastate an entire crop population. Okay? And meron pa mga example niya, yung potato blight. Okay? So that's it for plant pathogen. And as agents of decomposition, okay, many of them are saprophytes. Ano? Saprophytes would recycle inorganic nutrients depending on their substrate. No? So we have these fungus-like saprobes, which absorb nutrients from non-living organic matter, which will then give way for new plants to grow. Okay, so slime molds are example of saprophytic protists, and they move along decaying twigs and leaves engulfing organic matter. Okay, so in the picture right here, you can see this parang bright yellow siya, no? This is actually a slime growth, no? Over two na crossed lugs. Okay, in terms of economic and industrial use, no, so merong proteins, especially yung red and green algae na pwedeng kinakain. So alam mo yung lato and yung guso, these are examples of proteins no, as a source of food. We have here this Caulerpa lentilifera and Eucuma denticulatum, no. So very common po siya in marine studies, no. And in terms also of as a possible source of biofuel, sinasabi na blue, green, and brown algae are good candidates for biofuel, no? Which could eventually replace yung traditional na malapit ng maubos na fossil fuels. It's sustainable in a way na madaling i-culture si brown algae, and once you have a sustainable stock, then it's easy for you to propagate them and make many copies, no? And once they are when there's a lot of them, they can be harvested, no? And they can be processed into usable oil, diesel, and gas fuel. So yung advantage niya with that of fossil fuels is that it grows very fast and it allows producers to keep up with the ever-increasing demand for fuel. But still, there are many research, it's still an ongoing na research area, no? Maybe they are trying to parang fortify their method on how to really come up with a good biofuel from algae. Okay? So in terms of health naman, alam natin that some are pathogenic, ano? Okay? Some can live in or on the organism. So marami yan siya, yung malaria for example, yung plasmodium, 'di ba? Caused by plasmodium, African sleeping sickness, waterborne gastroenteritis in humans, all of these are caused by protists. And then we have yung plasmodium na sinabi natin kanina, no, na kung saan intermediate niya na host yung mosquito, okay? And malaria parasite life cycle would basically involve two hosts, no? Yung blood meal niya, yung malaria infected na female na anopheles na mosquito, it would inoculate, i-inject niya yung kanyang sporozoites into the human host, no? And these sporozoites will find its way to infect yung sa liver, yung sa liver, and it will mature into these schizonts, okay? These schizonts right here will rupture and release these merozoites, no? It's basically schizont is basically a cell that divides by schizogony to form these daughter cells. Okay? And then in the case of trypanosomes, okay? They cause this African sleeping sickness, no? It's caused yung vector naman hindi mosquito, it's transmitted by tsetse fly. Okay? And then, yeah, this is also about trypanosoma. Okay, so trypanosomiasis. So I hope this ends no our my our lesson for the second quarter, and I hope this will help you in your exam preparation. So God bless everyone. If you have questions, do not hesitate to call my attention. Okay? Okay, so God bless everyone. Bye bye.